great when loving God we come together to see the good and great things that you have done. The things you have done in our life. We have come here today to rejoice and celebrate in the fact that you have given us the greatest gift of all. And that's the gift of your love through your Son, Jesus Christ. So be with us as we listen to the Scriptures, as we lift our voice in song. And Lord, let the meditation of my heart and the words of my mouth be acceptable in your sight. Amen. You may be seated. The gospel lesson this morning is going to come from the Gospel of John in the 6th chapter, starting with the first verse, and it is about the feeding of the 5,000. So hear these words. After this, Jesus went to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, also called the Sea of Tiberias, and a large crowd kept following him, because they had saw the signs that he was doing for the sick. And Jesus went up the mountain, and he sat down there with his disciples. Now the Passover, the festival of the Jews, was near. And when he looked up and saw a large crowd coming towards him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread for these people to eat?" And he said this to test him, for he himself knew what he was going to do. But Philip answered him, 6 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each of them to get a little. Now one of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they among so many people?" And Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." Now there was a great deal of grass in the place, so they sat down, about 5,000 in all. Then Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to all those who were seated. So also the fish, as much as they wanted. And when they were satisfied, he told his disciples, "Gather up the fragments that are left over, so that nothing may be lost." So they gathered them up. And from the fragments of the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten, they filled 12 baskets. And when the people saw the sign that he had done, they began to say, "This is indeed the prophet who is to come into the world." And when Jesus realized that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, he withdrew again to a mountain by himself. These are the words of God to the people of God, and we say,
Thanks be to God.
We're going to take a look this morning at the feeding of the 5,000. But there's a little piece in this verse that captured my attention, and I hope it does yours. And it's in verse 9 when Andrew comes to Jesus and said, "There's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish." Over the last couple of weeks, I've been telling you out of the book of Mark about Jesus and his disciples being with large crowds and ministering to them, jumping into boats, going from shore to shore, finding little time to rest, because the crowds would keep following them wherever they went. And Jesus, in his entourage, once again go up a mountain, and he notices a crowd coming towards him again. And he asks Philip, "Where are we going to buy bread for these people to eat?" Kind of a rhetorical question that Jesus asked Philip, because he knew they didn't have enough money to feed all these people. What is going on is now a problem. Not a small problem, but a problem of one of major proportions. It's getting late, and there is no food service even close. There's no McDonald's, there's no Burger King, there's no buffet around the corner. They're in a desolate spot. They're in a desolate spot because that's where Jesus picked to go alone and pray. He didn't want to be bothered, but the crowds are going to come anyway, wherever he goes. And there were recorded 5,000 men. It does not count the women and children that were there. And there is nothing for them to eat. There is a great demand for which there is no supply to meet this demand. Now we've got problems. And this could have been an ugly situation, but it seemed like Jesus had a plan altogether. I'll tell you what, this plan better be good. Because I can see the patience of the disciples starting to wear thin, where Jesus seemed so kind of nonchalant about this whole mess that they were finding themselves in. But Jesus, knowing full well what he was about to do, wanted to see how the disciples were going to react. He knew full well that feeding these people, as we look at it through human aspects, is impossible. But if we look at it in the aspects of God, things will change. Things will change. It is like Jesus saying to Philip, will you trust me? Are you going to trust me? Will you feed these people even if you don't know how it's going to be done? Does Jesus test us today? The seemingly sometimes impossible task. Do you think Jesus still tests us today? Absolutely. All right? Take a funeral dinner. I'll give you this for an example. Somebody calls Liz. We want a funeral dinner. And we want it tomorrow morning. And this is 10 o'clock at night. Will it get done? Absolutely. I don't know how you girls do it. I don't even look back and ask why. I just know it gets done. And it gets done usually with the gratitude of a grieving family. It gets done. It's just that way. Because love takes over. When love takes over, things happen. Things happen. And there's going to be a time, probably already have, when you said to God, why are you testing me? Why are you testing me? Why would you want me to change jobs? Why would you want me to change jobs? Especially if I don't have any reassurance that things are going to work out with a new job. Believe me, that's the question I asked. Because this wasn't my first job. And I really had to ask that question. Because what if I fall on my face? Especially if I don't know what's ahead of me. But Philip said 6 months' wages would not even be enough to buy any crumbs for these people. Send them home and let them make their own bread.